Make your IELTS essay sound more academic in 5 minutes. Hello there, my name is Ben Worthington, and today we're going to just have a quick look at a very easy technique, and it's something that you need to know to make your essays sound more academic. And it's quite a common problem, and you probably don't even realize that you're making it. So what I'm talking about is hedging. Now the term hedging goes back a long time. We're basically talking about the 16th century, and originally, well, still to this day, a hedge is a small tree. And it's usually like quite compact and it's difficult to explain. It's a small tree, it's quite compact, and they were originally used to separate fields and land, to limit the actual land, okay? To actually limit the area and to separate it. And then the term was used in the financial industry to hedge your investment, to make a limit on the amount that you're prepared to lose. And so the term got used as a form of expressing risk or limiting risk or limiting your exposure. And we can use the same term in our writing. And what we are basically doing is avoid making an outright assumption. Okay, we are hedging our bets, we are hedging our writing, we're avoiding making a overstatement, a big assumption. Okay, and interestingly, the idiomatic expression hedge your bets also comes from this. To hedge your bets just means that you're going to take up like a backup position. You're going to hedge your bets, you're going to secure yourself. Right then, let's go. So hedging is common in all the higher essays, higher band scored essays. You will find that they are hedged because it's just part of academic writing. So there's 3 advantages to this. Okay, it'll increase your score because it gives you the opportunity to use a wider selection of grammar constructions, which we're going to look at in a second. If you have difficulty reaching the 250 word limit, then if you start hedging your assumptions and opinions and your statements, you're going to increase the amount of words you use. So reaching that 250 limit is going to be much easier. And the third and probably the most important one is that your essay is going to have a more academic style, which the examiner will love you and probably send you a present of €2,000 afterwards. Sorry, I'm just joking. Anyway, let's go. So the technical definition of hedging is to limit or qualify your opinion. Basically, like what I said before, avoid an overgeneralization. So what we need to do is look for statements that are quite generalized, okay? And usually with the essays, it's when you represent a belief that you may have, but you may represent it as a fact, okay? So you may use words like will, all, everywhere, always, never. Okay, words and tenses that may present 100% certainty, right? So let me give you an example. If I said in my essay, all German people are always punctual, this is a massive overgeneralization, and in the space of 6 words, I have presented my opinion as a fact for 98 million people, a whole country. Because of my statement, now every single person in Germany is always punctual. And of course this is complete rubbish. It's not. It would be much more accurate to say that German people have the reputation of being punctual, or it is very common for German people to be punctual. Yeah. Likewise, another sentence. English people will act politely when around others. English people will act politely when around others. Now, this is less obvious because we don't have all or always like the sentence before. However, we are still making a very sweeping assumption about the country of I don't know, I think it's 60 million people. Yeah, 60 million people now are all polite according to this statement. And having been in England, having lived in England a long time, I can tell you that's not the case. Obviously it's not the case, but anyway, so what would be more academic would be if we just said English people have the reputation of being polite when around others, or English people often act polite when around others. Okay, now I'll give you another example with another essay, but with a sentence in an essay. Okay, over the last half of the century, young members of society acquire extremely high positions and power. This phenomenon will cause enormously serious issues in the future. This was from an essay that a student sent to me. I'll read it again, and I want you to tell me, I want you to try and spot where this essay needs to be hedged. Let's have another look, another listen. Over the last half of the century, young members of society acquire extremely high positions and power. This phenomenon will cause enormously serious issues in the future. So the problems here are more related to the tenses, because we said over the last half of the century, young members of society acquire extremely high positions and power. The problem is acquire. Yeah, we're just assuming that every single young person in society will, or every young person in society acquires positions of power. And this, unfortunately, is not the case. And we'd have to limit that statement, and we'll say, or even, it is quite erroneous to start off with, but the focus here is the hedging. So we would say, over the last half of the century, it's been increasingly common for younger people to reach positions of power. Okay, increasingly common. The next sentence, this phenomenon will cause enormously serious issues in the future. Will cause, no, we'd say will probably cause or might cause, yeah, and we limit it. So those are the two problems with those two sentences. And this was an essay that a student sent to me for correction and for some help, and I immediately spotted this, and it needs to be taken into account and obviously hedged. So the hedged version would be, over the last half of the century, it is widely believed that many young people have acquired extremely high positions and power. This phenomenon could cause enormously serious issues in the future, or extremely serious issues in the future would be the more correct way to say that. And just as a side note, with this essay, it's quite a difficult position or statement to believe at first glance, but then I recommended the student to use some examples, some real world examples, and all he has to do now is take, for example, the dot-com millionaires appearing in California, for example, yeah, and then go on to explain why this might be a problem. Or another example, take for example the young celebrities who become famous overnight, blah 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 blah. Okay, and although the position is not entirely correct, from my personal opinion, I don't know if it would cause serious issues in the future. However, there's a solid example, and I can explain the point if it were my essay. And I would explain the point using the dot-com millionaires in Silicon Valley, Mark Zuckerberg, for example, or maybe the overnight celebrities like Paris Hilton or Kardashians. Okay, right then. So by using the generalizations and using the probabilities, what we're doing is we're avoiding making strong statements, and we're avoiding presenting our opinions as facts. So we want to wrap sentences in probabilities, and we want to wrap the sentences in probabilities, okay, possibilities. So going back to that first example, what we did, and what you can do in other essays, is you can say, we can use a that clause. That clause is really simple, and all we have to use is 4 words, and we say, it could be suggested that all young people nowadays are increasingly rising to positions of high power. Yeah, and we just put this before our sentence. Another example, it might be the case that all young people are reaching positions of power and prosperity, blah blah blah. Yeah, and we put these 5 words, sorry, in front of our original opinion. So it may be argued that blah 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 blah. Okay, I'll just go over those 3 again. Maybe you want to write them down to help you remember them. So you'd write, it could be suggested that, bang, and then you put what you believe. Write this one down. It may be the case that, sorry, it might be the case that, and then the last one, it may be argued that. Doing this, writing them down will help you remember them. Now, okay, so what we're basically doing is we're changing the will for could, and or we could change it for might, must, would, and increasing the probability. Not increasing the, yeah. Changing it from an absolute certainty to a possibility. Another quick technique we could use, if we just go back to that original sentence, and we said, this phenomenon will cause enormously serious issues in the future. So what we could change it to is, this phenomenon will often cause enormously seriously issues. Another version, this phenomenon will usually cause enormously serious issues. Okay, or will most likely cause. And we've got a few options there. So after the will, we just change it for an adverb of frequency or possibility. Okay then, so have a look at this essay, or have a listen, and see if you can identify which parts need changing. This is another essay that a student sent to me. People will always value luxurious things and high status more than honest friendship and family life. This can be seen everywhere. For example, parents always choose friends from families with the same status. Therefore, people are becoming more egoistic, and they will separate from poorer people. One more time. People will always value luxurious things and high status more than honest friendships and family life. This can be seen everywhere. For example, parents always choose friends from families with the same status. Therefore, people are becoming more egoistic, and they will separate from poorer people. Now, hopefully, you identified there's about 4 areas there where there was a problem, okay, where the sentences need to be hedged. For example, people will always value luxurious things. That's incorrect, obviously, because there are people that don't value luxurious things, and they value their freedom, they value their, I don't know, their health more. Yeah, so here we've got a problem. People will always value luxurious things. That's one problem. Later it says this can be seen everywhere. Can it really be seen everywhere? You know, there's quite a lot of examples. For example, maybe in the 70s, when there's a lot of hippies, they didn't value luxurious things. And then later in the sentence it says parents always choose friends from families with the same status. Not really. Maybe if it's a poor family, they may choose friends for their children from a richer family, just to get that benefit, if there were a benefit. So make sure you're not making statements like this in your essay. And then in the final part it says, therefore people are becoming more egoistic, and they will separate from poorer people. That's a massive assumption from 3 very speculative and inaccurate sentences before. Yeah. Now, now we'll have a look at one final essay, okay? And I want you to tell me, and you can even send it in an email if you want to. You go to YouTube and you can watch the video on this, so you can copy out the text, or you can go to slideshare.net and search for IELTS podcast, and there you'll see all these presentations. Or you can go to the website, put into Google IELTS podcast hedging, and it'll come up with all of this material. But a good exercise now would be to copy down what I'm saying, and then try and circle the part where you think this essay needs to be hedged. If you go to YouTube, or if you go to SlideShare, or if you go to my website, or maybe you can even send your email in to me from this dictation and tell me where they've been hedged, and I promise I'll reply. I reply to every single email that's sent. So I'll just read it now, and if you've got a pen, excellent. I'm going to read it quite fast, so you can pause and go back if you need to. The factors mentioned above cause serious issues in our society. The most significant is that people will separate from others, especially from people with a low level of income. This causes some tensions in the local community. For example, there will be more fights between neighbours. Another problem is our children's behaviour. They will learn how to behave from their ignorant parents who value money more than anything else. Sorry about that. They will learn how to behave from their ignorant parents who value money more than anything else. Thus, they might have problems at school and between their peers. So hopefully you've written that down, and you're going to spot the problems with the hedging and then send it to me. So now, just to give you a little bit more, we've got about 30 seconds left and then I'm going. So here's my email, IELTSPodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email, ask for help, whatever. We can do this. I get emails every week saying thank you for the Band 7, have you got any speaking products, blah blah blah. And by the way, there is a speaking product. Have a look at the website. And yeah, but just remember, It's not impossible. There's lots of instances where students have passed, so good luck.